The world is full of beautiful places. I'm going to show you one of them. Today, this place is one of Krakow's 18 districts, but only a century ago it was the free royal city of Podgorze. Every wall and building in this district has its own history. Even today you can feel the spirit of pre-war Krakow in Podgorze. When going on a stroll here, you won't be bothered by any intrusive advertisements. This only emphasizes the value of Podgorze. Green areas make up 2/3 of the district, which makes it Krakow's central park. It's worth designating a whole day for a trip around this wonderful place. And now I'm going to take you on a journey through the most beautiful district of Krakow, the jewel in the crown of this royal city. Join me on a tour of Podgorze. Our tour will begin here. This is Krakow's Mound, lying atop Lasote Hill. It is Krakow's oldest man-made structure and the symbol of Podgorze. Legend has it associated with Krak, the legendary founder of Krakow. Medieval historian Jan Długosz wrote that Krak was buried at the top of the hill according to custom, while his two sons erected the mound for their father's eternal memory according to his will. Archaeological excavations near the mound have revealed traces of the Łużycka culture. The mound's internal structure is based around a pole surrounded by woven wicker partitions, filled with compact soil and stones. This construction has provided the mound stability for many centuries. Geological samples taken during excavations have proven that the soil used for building the mound comes from the vicinity of Lasotis Hill, namely the current location of the New Podgorze Cemetery, where an ancient settlement was once found. In 1849, a citadel-type fort, part of Krakow Fortress, was built around the mound. It was named Fort 33. In 1954, the fortifications were demolished, but you can still see its outline from above. The mound has always been a place of great importance in Krakow. Even the windows of the stateroom at Wawel's castles have a direct view of the mound. It was supposed to remind the rulers of the achievements of their predecessors. There are a few theories that suggest that the Krzemionki area had multiple mounds in it. Their function remains a mystery, however. Today, the mound is a favorite destination for couples who come here during every season of the year. There is a breathtaking view over Podgorze as well as other parts of Krakow from the top of the mound. Leaving the vicinity of Krakow's Mound, we are heading towards a place with a history stained by human tragedy. This place is the Płaszów concentration camp. The camp was located near the Jewish ghetto and the Płaszów railway station. It was built atop two Jewish cemeteries. The camp's internal road network was paved with Macewa's gravestones. When entering its area from the side of Jerozolimska Street, you will pass by Szary Dom, the Grey House, an SS torture site. The German oppressors tortured and killed camp inmates in the house's basement. Construction began with a group of the barracks built along an extension of Jerozolimska Street. As early as December 1942, the first batch of workers were kept in the unfinished barracks. The working conditions were dreadful. The only remains of the cemeteries are the ruins of a funeral home, which was blown up by the Nazis in the summer of 1944. The building played an important role in history. Valuables from Krakow's synagogues were kept in a secret hiding place in the attic. Although the western wing where the hiding place was located survived the explosion, The priceless items were discovered by the Germans. Some of them were immediately destroyed, while others were transported to Germany. Amon Geth became the camp commander in 1943, an inhuman torturer who enjoyed killing off inmates by himself. There are recorded incidents of Geth sentencing entire work squad to die because they were found to have food from outside the camp. He often practiced his marksman skills by shooting his inmates from his car. It is estimated that he killed around 500 people. Over the course of his service, he amassed a huge fortune by robbing the camp inmates. The scale of this theft was immense. Even though such practices were informally permitted, Geth was arrested for this in 1944 and sent to prison by German authorities. He was pardoned soon thereafter because he was diabetic. On May 4, 1945, he was arrested by the American Army. Even though he used a false name, he was recognized by former inmates of the Płaszów camp. Amon Geth was handed over to Polish authorities, who sentenced him to death. He was executed on September 13, 1946. His last words were "Heil Hitler." The camp was built in several stages. From June 1942, it functioned as a labor camp for Jews from the Krakow ghetto who worked in munition factories. A decision to transform it into a forced labor camp was made on November 27, 1942. At first, the camp housed only Jewish prisoners, although the situation changed in July 1943 when the SS and police commander for the Krakow area created a so-called correctional labor camp for Poles in Płaszów. The Płaszów camp was the second largest camp in Poland, right after Auschwitz. It is estimated that there had been 150,000 inmates in the camp over the years it was active. A vast majority of them died. Between 2,000 to 25,000 inmates imprisoned there at any given point in time. Camp liquidation began in the summer of 1944. Inmates were transported to extermination camps, buildings were demolished, and bodies of deceased were burned and buried. A small group of about 600 prisoners were left in the camp for the purpose of carrying out the work. Little remains of the former camp. The only ruins remaining are the old armory and the funeral home, while on the camp's grounds you can, however, notice the foundations of former barrack buildings or the gathering square. The camp was finally liberated by the Red Army on January 18, 1945. There are two mass execution sites located on the camp grounds. One of them is Chujowa Mound, a hilltop where a large grave was dug for the bodies of the murdered inmates. Between 6,000 and 10,000 camp inmates, as well as prisoners from the Montelupich prison, are believed to be buried there. In the summer of 1944, when the front line was pushing towards Krakow relentlessly, the Germans began to dig up graves, burn the bodies, and scatter the remains around the camp. The second execution site is Typowy Pit. A monument to the victims of Nazi Germany stands in its place today. The back of the monument reads, "In memory of the people killed by Nazi murderers between 1943 and 1945. The monument is placed on the rampart of an old Austro-Hungarian fortification. It is one of the world's most famous monuments to the victims of World War II. Right next to Typowy Pit is the inanimate nature reserve Bonarka. It holds over 5 acres of fossilized remains of sea creatures, ammonites, sponges, sea urchins, brachiopods, and many other interesting geological phenomena. When walking around the area of the nature reserve, you are actually crossing the bottom of a Jurassic Sea. The reserve has an educational trail, which I strongly recommend. When visiting the Płaszów camp, you can meet natives of Podgórze who still remember the days when the camp was active. The memory of these tragic events lives on in Podgorze until this very day. Despite the fact that there are few remaining camp structures, the empty spaces are as thought-provoking as Auschwitz. Moving to the south, we arrive at Liban Stone Quarry. The quarry was named after its owner, Bernard Liban. The history of burning lime and obtaining stone from masonry in the Krzemionki area reaches back to the medieval age, however. In 1942, the Nazis founded a penal labor camp here for the Baudienst building company. Over the course of its existence, more than 2,000 prisoners were forced to work within. On the site of the quarry, there is also a collective grave for the last prisoners of the Płaszów camp. In the present day, the quarry is partially flooded. It is a refuge for many different species of flora and fauna, yet only a stone's toss away from the city center. It hasn't always been this way. In 1993, Steven Spielberg built a replica of the Płaszów concentration camp here for the filming of Schindler's List. Although it's hard to believe, 34 barracks, 11 watchtowers and a replica of the commander's villa were once built here. The cost of this enterprise was over $500,000. Today, little remains of the film set. When visiting the quarry, you will find remains of the camp fence and a road paved with gravestones. The film props are so convincing that many tourists believe it to be authentic remains of the actual camp. The effect is amplified by derelict constructions, limestone mills, kilns, and conveyor belts. Unfortunately, they have been forgotten for years and are covered with rust. There are no official tourist trails leading to the quarry either. It's worth taking an extra effort to get to the quarry, as it is truly impressive. An imposing cliff overlooks the quarry, dubbed El Colonel by rock climbers, a homage to the El Capitan rock face in the Yosemite National Park. Climbing fans will find a multitude of challenging routes here. Perhaps one day we will see this place renovated and officially open for tourists.